Welcome to Eviliv3, the live media commentary show that answers the question, how many times would I murder someone if they stepped up to my daughter like they did in this show today? My goodness. All right, subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing FX's Justified City Primeval Season 1, Episode 2, The Oklahoma Wildman. So this was, I think, really just an episode to tell us exactly what type of man Clement Mansell is, the Oklahoma Wildman. It's really just sort of framing what he's capable of so that later in this series we understand when he does certain things and why he does certain things. And ultimately, this is taken place in two different spaces of time. So in the first episode, last episode, we had Clement Mansell murder the judge simply because the judge was pissing him off in his car. And it was not even supposed to be doing it. He had no grudge against the judge. It's just that what he was trying to do, he couldn't do, and the judge was in the way in his car acting like an asshole. And so he chased the judge down, pulled him over on the side, and executed him right through the windshield with a whole bunch of bullet wounds. So that's where the preponderance of this episode takes place after the fact and dealing with the fallout and repercussions of that act. However, we open this episode with a bit of a preface, again, to sort of contextualize not just Marcus Swinton's connection with Clement Mansell, but also what Clement Mansell is like. And it really reminded me of the very opening scene of The Dark Knight when we first see the Joker, because they break into a bank, they are going through and collecting all the money, and one by one, all of the bad guys are being executed so that there's only one person left, the Joker. And that's kind of the vibe I got from this. Clement barges into a drug dealer's house with two other guys. He's got Sweetie on the inside, but none of the other drug dealers know about it. And he basically just robs them. And ultimately, it comes down to this situation where Clement shoots the other two guys that helped him break in and saved Sweetie's ass, because he says Sweetie used to be a kick-ass bass player and he respects him musically and he would never do anything bad to him because of that. And the other two wanted Clement to shoot Sweetie. And so, of course, Clement couldn't do that because he has so much admiration and respect for Sweetie, and so ultimately he saves him. And 3 days after that, one of the drug dealers who was executed ended up surviving the multiple bullet wounds and ended up being the witness that put Clement into jail, which, of course, we saw the outside of him coming back out of jail and coming back into town at the very beginning of the first episode. So that was a bit of a time travel device in order to quantify how shitty and really off the handle Clement Mansell can actually be. I thought it was a great way to set up not just the coming episode, especially when we see Clement with Raylan's daughter. Sweet hell, I was literally screaming at the TV, and it freaked my dogs out. I kind of felt bad because I had a couple glasses of wine and I was a little upset. You don't fuck with a man's kid. You just don't do it. It's unheard of. If you fuck with a man's kid, you need to expect to be beaten brutally. But I don't want to get to the end yet. So we pick up after that incident, sort of going to modern time, where Raylan is going to Sandy Stanton's apartment where Clement is actually hiding out, and they go to ask her about Clement. Ultimately, she sort of shakes him off and everything, and she ends up giving them her car key because they're, of course, looking for the car that damaged and ultimately was responsible for the judge's death. That's what they're investigating. They suspect Clement had something to do with it because of, I actually don't know how. I just rewatched it too, and I don't think they ever actually explained why they think Clement's involved, other than the fact that He's a wild card and he's in town, so they're just sort of checking him up on a cold call. I don't know. Anyway, they go to his house, the apartment and everything, and she's doing her best to sort of push them away and get them out of there, so she ends up giving them her key. Clement's like, look, you need to get rid of this gun, because I killed a judge with this gun. You need to throw this shit off the bridge. So she goes to throw it off the bridge. They go to follow her because, again, Raylan Givens is a great fucking Marshal, and he just has this feeling that she's going to try to run or she's going to try to do something because she clearly knows more than she's letting on, because she's a terrible liar, even though she's a great character. I think the actress Adelaide Clemens is doing a great job portraying Sandy Stanton. So they follow her to a bridge. She goes, she doesn't quite pull out the gun to throw it away, but the detective, the DPD, and Raylan are clearly suspecting that that's what she's doing now that she's standing on the bridge. Because it's really, there's only two reasons. Well, there's three reasons to go onto a bridge. One is to do a Seinfeld-style reflection moment where you then run across the bridge and scare a bunch of seagulls away. The other is to kill yourself, jump off the bridge. She clearly did not seem to be doing that. And then three, the last one is to get rid of evidence. Throw a gun over the bridge. So she didn't do that. And so she ends up going over to Sweetie's bar, which is arguably the worst place to go because that's where the gun came from originally. And it's just like he worked with Clement. If you want to go to a place where the DPDs are ultimately going to look, go back to Sweetie's. And so that's exactly what she does, like an idiot. And there's a scene in here where she goes into the bathroom to try to figure out where she can dispose of this gun secretly. And of course, she ends up going in the ceiling rafters where it was originally. It's just arguably, it's just like The Godfather. You need to hide a gun, you go to the bathroom and hide it there. And I respect it. I like how they did that call out from the very first episode. They're sort of repaying it back in this one of her sort of hiding the evidence. All right. However, she's wearing heels and she has to stand on a toilet. And I went on a huge tirade, to my wife's dismay, about how unbelievably ridiculous it would be for a woman in heels to stand effectively on a toilet seat in order to reach way up into the rafters to hide a gun. And then they had her slip and her foot went in, it broke the heel, and I was just like clapping. Like, thank you for addressing the reality of a woman in heels trying to climb up on a toilet seat. You knew she was going to slip and fall, hit her head. She was going to break a heel, step in the shit. Something had to happen. If it just went off without a hook, I would have been furious. But if there's one thing that Justified has always done from the very beginning of the series, the original series, and now with this new revival of it, it's listen to me. Whether it's dialogue, whether it's character actions, I'm calling this shit as it happens. It's not like I know it. I just this is what I would do if I was writing it, and they write it and they have the actress enact it on screen, and it's so satisfying. I can see some people being like, well, if you already feel like you know what's going to happen, how is that exciting to watch? But in my opinion, it's the obvious thing to do, which is a wonderful payoff for the moment and the character. So it has to happen. If it didn't happen, it would not make any sense and I would be infuriated to the writers. But they do it. They continually fucking follow through with the shit that I want them to because it's good television. There are so many other series where I am so disappointed on a regular basis. So some of them I've reviewed on this channel, where I'm thinking, this is what should be happening. Why isn't this happening? And I get upset. Justified is always that series where you're like, this should be happening. Why is it? Oh, it just happened. Thank you, Justified. And you feel good because the world is right again. This is just one of those series that you will feel good watching, even while you're watching something horrendous or you're upset watching it because of what's happening on screen. So great. Anyway, so she ends up leaving with a broken ass heel, walking back to her car. The detective is watching her. Meanwhile, Raylan is called into Carolyn Wilder. Hey, she's on screen again. I can't get away from this girl. Called into her office, and she's sitting there with Clement Mansell in the seat. And she's basically telling him, look, unless you are going to arrest This man, you need to stay the hell away from him and do not harass him anymore, referencing the earlier meeting, of course, going up to his hotel apartment. And then Raylan gets a call from his daughter. He told his daughter to stay at the hotel. She went off wandering the Detroit streets. And let me just say this about 14, 15-year-old girls. You're fucking stupid. Now, 14 and 15-year-old boys are stupid as well. So I'm not picking on gender here. I'm picking on age. You're fucking stupid. You are old enough to think you know things, but you're young enough to not realize how stupid you actually are. I was the same way at that age. I'm not any better. But that's the reality. You're fucking dumb. So she goes as a young fucking 14, 15-year-old girl wandering the streets of Detroit. Come on. Fuck are you doing? How stupid are you? That doesn't mean you're going to automatically be assaulted or raped or brutalized or anything. No, people walk streets all the time. But the chances of it happening unaccompanied are higher than if you were accompanied with your father or friends or whatever. Because you're alone, you're in an unfamiliar place, and you don't know shit about shit. It's so upsetting. I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they had her do it because it really set up this dynamic that we experience later on when she realizes she has the wool pulled from her eyes and she realizes she doesn't know anything, actually. She's actually really vulnerable and she doesn't even really know anything about her father. So they had to show that scene. But she walks up to this guy is trying to sell her obviously a fake Rolex, and she's super witty for 15 and, sort of plays him off and like gets it for $7 knowing it's a total, bullshit fake. I think a regular 14, 15-year-old may know that those are fakes. They're not total idiots. They're just stupid. And so, maybe it would have played like that in real life, but I think that was more of an adult woman's reaction to someone trying to sell her a fake watch than a child's reaction. And let's not pretend that 14 and 15-year-olds are adults. They're not. They're children. You can throw around the label of teen or preteen, whatever you want. Young adult. They're kids. That's it. They're kids. And kids are stupid. All right. I'm done with my kid being stupid rant. Actually, my daughter is incredibly intelligent. My son is incredibly intelligent. I don't know why I'm being so harsh on Willa, but she really bothered me in this episode. And so I'm sort of hammering that home with this little diatribe. So if you're a 14 and 15-year-old kid watching this, who cares what I say? Be your best self. Live your best life. Just do it safely. All right, so she ends up wandering around while Raylan is off talking with the attorney and Clement. He calls her to see where she is, or she calls him. Realizes that she's not actually at the hotel anymore. He tells her to go back. And then Clement leaves the office. He goes in to make sure that everything's okay with with Carolyn, the attorney. And ultimately, it's crazy when you're alone with the dogs in the house and you start hearing creaking coming down your hall. We actually had, just a quick aside, while I was in here recording on one of these other episodes, someone tried to open my bedroom window. They pulled the screen out in the side, but the window was locked, and so they couldn't get in. And so I'm consciously aware now. Oh, I think my family's home now. Okay. So it's them, not burglars. But ultimately, Clement goes and tries to hunt down where Raylan Givens is living so he can, mess him up or something. Ultimately, I think what he's doing is a sort of a replay of what happened in the first episode where the case got thrown out because Raylan abused his behavior with this the criminal that he was taking into jail, right? He sort of took him on this wild goose chase and kept him, threatened to keep him in his trunk. Ultimately, the judge threw the case out. I think Clement is trying to redo that by pressuring Raylan in order to get Raylan to then react. And then Raylan cannot be held responsible when it comes to his word in any sort of criminal case because he abused Clement. It'll look like Raylan is hunting down and antagonizing Clement. And that will then muddy up any case that he might have to throw at him later on. So I think that's his plan, which goes off spectacularly because he ultimately contacts Willa and tells Willa that his dad sent her to him. And this is why it's so important as a parent. Have some sort of code word or safe word or something with your kids so that if someone has to go pick them up, that they know it is in fact the person that is supposed to be picking them up. Or in this particular case, have a code word or something so that if someone comes to go watch your kid, even if it's at the public hotel, they know that it is in fact someone that you want them to watch. And all it takes is just coming up with a phrase or a word or something that they can say, okay, well, what's the passphrase? And if they can't give it to you, you know they're lying and you shut the door and lock it and you don't let them in and you call the cops. You have to protect your children, people. I'm not going crazy with this, and it's not going to happen all the time, but it's a simple thing to set up, have in place, so that stuff like this never actually happens. So, Clement connects with Willa, Raylan's daughter, at the hotel. Raylan doesn't know about it. So Raylan goes off and does his sort of business, ultimately goes back to the hotel, finds in the lobby, in the restaurant, that Clement is sitting down with his daughter, eating dinner, and Clement starts to sort of press the advantage to get a reaction, saying, I heard, and at the very, very beginning of the whole original Justified series, it opened with Raylan killing a sort of a gun-drawing sort of murder. It was justified, though, hence the name of the series, which got him sent over to Kentucky. But he killed a drug dealer on the top of a roof in Miami. That got him kicked out of Miami, was sent back to the hollers up in Kentucky, where the whole series takes place. At the very end of the series, he goes back to Miami. And of course, that's where this picks up. So Clement starts saying, I got a really interesting story about you on a rooftop in Miami, with a gun. And Raylan immediately flashes the badge and the holstered gun, grabs Clement, takes him outside, slams him against the glass door, throws him against the taxi, and just starts beating the shit out of him. The guy's like, look, I'm not into young girls, but if I was in Kentucky, I would definitely tap that ass. And he starts beating him again. Just starts pummeling this guy. And the whole time I'm screaming at the TV like, fuck him up. Yeah, come on. Like, I was so angry. You don't fuck with a dude's kids. You just don't do it. I don't care who you are. And any kid is some dude's kid, so leave children alone. Just bottom line, period, end of story. That's it. Don't fuck around with kids. Leave them alone. Because you're going to get your ass handed to you if you do. And Raylan pummeled the shit out of him. And there's this like sort of kitschy little like, if I see you again, I'm going to put a hole in you type thing. And Clement's response to always something like that is, not if I see you first. Really stupid. But Clement doesn't fight back again because Clement is trying to get beat up. He's trying to elicit a reaction from Raylan so that he can use that later on when Raylan tries to throw justice at him, I guess, as it were. Anyway, great episode. I remember last episode was like, Raylan was in the forefront of it. I wanted more of Raylan. Holy shit, did they give us more of Raylan in spades, and it was dope as fuck. Loved this episode. So great. I have to give it 5 out of 5 evil eyes. How could you not? Raylan is on just point in this episode. A little bit of verbal interplay and showing of concern with the attorney in her relations with Clement. Raylan does a great job just sort of letting her know that he's into her. He's willing to protect her. She's not open to that quite yet. So she sort of pushes him off. Clement's doing everything he can to build up a case against Raylan before Raylan gets a case against him with this death of the judge. And again, it was just a sporadic thing. It wasn't a premeditated murder, which makes this so much more interesting. If Clement went in there intentionally trying to kill him, none of this would have been solved because he would have gotten rid of the evidence. He would have taken care of the car. It would have been a whole thing. But because he told his girlfriend, Sandy, to go take care of the gun and she didn't, that opens up the entire case again. And now, is Sandy going to be stretching her legs trying to get her own plea deal later on? Clement's going to bring up the difficulty with Raylan. How does Willa deal fit into all this because she watched her father beat the shit out of Clement and almost murder him. Like, he was ready to put a hole in him. And she was just shocked. I think this is the first time she saw her father in that context. And this is something I want to kind of touch on really quick before I end this. Because I have a young daughter and I've raised a son. Your children don't really understand why, in most cases, you tell them to do things. And it's really incumbent upon you to explain that. I'm really bad about that. I was, I did 5 years in the military, and that had, when I was a young man, and so it really sort of ingrained in my head, I'm going to give you an order, I need you to execute that order. That's just been the way that I have thought. And so I'm much more direct, and I don't explain things as much as I should with my kids. And so it's a flaw of mine that I'm continually trying to work on, failing more often than not, if I'm being honest. But I do try, and I know it's a flaw. I just have to explain contextually why I'm asking things of them. And if Raylan would have done that, then it would have put her in a position of understanding the repercussions of her actions, especially sitting down next to Clement. If he just would have said, "This is a murderer, honey, go to your room," then she wouldn't be arguing with her dad about, well, what if I just order some dinner or some dessert while you guys have dinner and I hear some more stories, or, it's still early, I'll just stay up a little bit later. No, this is a murderer who's sitting next to you who is trying to kill me. Step aside and I'm going to take care of this. And the other side of that is, why the hell do kids have to constantly push back? Can't you understand that your parents ask you to do things for a reason? They're not trying to make your life miserable. They're not trying to punish you all the time. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to protect you. That's it. They, in some cases, know what's best, or in a certain situation, understand that this is the best outcome for you to do X in order to prevent Y. Just listen. Again, there doesn't have to be antagonism between a parent and a child. You can just understand that they ask you to do something for a reason. You do it. You can ask them why afterward, and you can have a full conversation about it. And they'll push back, and that's okay. It's okay for kids to push back against their parents, to really understand and want to understand why. But in this particular case, he's trying to save your life. Like, listen to the man. Jeez, you're your own worst enemy in this very moment. And if you only knew the type of man that was sitting next to you, you would get up and run with your life. And I struggle with that, so I understand why he is struggling with it as well. I just think as adults, we have to be more open with our children and more honest, and not talk to them as children or soldiers in my case. Talk to them as other human beings who need to understand why you're asking certain things of them. And ultimately, it will lead to an open form of communication with them and of greater understanding contextually of you. And ultimately, she saw in her father a version of him that she had never known before, that scared her and should scare her, because he's never been open and honest to her about what he's capable of. And that doesn't mean show her, but it certainly does mean sit down and talk to her. Look, I'm a U.S. Marshal, and sometimes I have to deal with people, and sometimes I have to kill people, and I don't want to. I don't try to. But even I get thrown off balance, and I react in bad ways. Like you just saw me beat this dude senseless. He tried to get me to react that way, and I fell into that trap. I shouldn't have done it, but he elicited that response. And that's why I did it. I'm sorry, but he is a murderer, and you were not safe. Explain it. I think she would have understood, and she would actually appreciate you more for having explained it. All right. So that is my review of episode 2, The Oklahoma Wildman. And I got to be honest, I am stoked to see where this goes next, because this is great. This is great writing. This is great acting. This is a wonderful series so far, and we're only 2 episodes of the 8 in. I can't wait for next week. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know what you thought of episode 2 in the comments below. And as always, remember, the evil spelled backwards is live, so get your tookuses out there and be evil.